legislation diminishes the services that are provided to the public, and that the latitude that the new governor is going to have, as Governor Corzine realized, and I've seen firsthand at the bargaining table, that the latitude one thinks one has in collective bargaining is severely curtailed by our current laws, by things like binding interest arbitration and the like.
Yeah. You think we're, the issues we've been talking about, pension reform, home rule, they've been on the table for a number of years, and I think the solutions have been politically untenable. Do you think we're at the breaking point now, where we're finally going to see some action?
I think
some
so.
Of those, yeah?
I think the public is clamoring for it, but even putting aside the public demand for it, and that's not to diminish it, government won't be able to function without addressing these things, and it requires true political courage. I think Governor Corzine had that. His approach was incrementally. We may not have the luxury of an incremental approach to these things, given where we are right now, and given our global economy, which is driving a good part of this, so that it's going to require some swifter and more immediate and more firm action. And that's not a bad thing. Maybe we needed to, what do they say, the psychologists, sometimes you need to hit bottom
right,
before you move on. Well, I think we're there.
Now you've take off your hat on collective bargaining and put on your one about voting rights. You're one of the outstanding experts in the country on voting rights and the whole question of guaranteeing that, in fact, people's franchise are going to be counted. Give us a little idea of how you got into that and what are the basic principles that have guided you.
Well, thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about that, because that's my passion and my love, and where I feel most fulfilled as a lawyer. I guess that I stumbled on it. I was a lawyer a couple of years out of law school. Actually, I guess I was in law school when I first had the opportunity to work with then Congressman Florio in his first campaign for governor in the Democratic primary in 1977. And when he chose to run in 1981, he was the candidate I supported, and we were successful in the primary. And there were so few of us, I guess they had to find a lawyer to represent the Democratic Party when Governor Florio chose its new chairman. So I guess I was the guy in the room that they figured, well, let's give the kid an opportunity. So I became counsel to the New Jersey Democratic Party, and we ran for Governor Florio, and we lost in the closest statewide election in our history. In that election, Governor Florio's campaign was visited on Election Day with a very aggressive effort by the Republican National Committee and the New Jersey Republican State Committee, which we believed, and to this day believe, was designed to suppress minority voters from participating in urban districts throughout our state, Trenton, Newark, Camden, and Asbury Park, and other places. Those events spawned a Voting Rights Act litigation. As in most political campaigns, in the aftermath of close elections, there's a great deal of excitement. There's a recount, there's a recheck, but after the dust settles and a winner is declared, there's not too much interest. But given my role as state party counsel, and given the leadership of then Chairman Jim Maloney, a great man, and Jim Florio's former law partner, we felt it was an important enough issue to continue. And we proceeded with a litigation, and that litigation lasted 2 years through depositions and discovery, and ultimately led to the entry of a precedent-setting consent order entered by Judge Dickerson Debevoise, which prescribed the kind of conduct that we had seen on that election day in 1981 from ever again being executed by the Republican National Committee or the New Jersey Republican State Committee in this state. Surprisingly to me, although with great gratitude, that consent order proved to be seminal in its implementation and a very important tool for voters and particularly minority voters to ensure their participation in many, many elections since then. It was modified over time. It required pre-clearance of certain ballot security programs and the like, but it survived many, many years. And in fact, in the 1997 presidential race, it was, it would have been, I guess, 2004, the Kerry race. that it became the basis for African American voters to gain access to the polls in Ohio when there were certain challenge programs that were implemented. So it has had great viability, and I have been fortunate to be a lawyer that was one of the architects of its contents and one of its chief advocates, and a lawyer that many of people turn to, particularly partisans, my party, turn to enforce over the last 30 years. Most recently, that order was challenged by the Republican National Committee. I was pleased to learn yesterday that Judge Debevoise upheld the order, did not dissolve it, modified it a bit, but modified it in a way that I think was appropriate after 30 years. But over the course of time, in addition to that consent order and serving as a lawyer for partisans, I came to understand intimately our electoral system, saw over the years things that showed how fragile that system or it was and remains. I think we saw it as recently as Bush versus Gore, and we continue to see it in close elections, the Franken-Coleman election, and that we have a fragile system, and the importance of people's access to the polls is paramount to the survival and maintenance of our democracy. And I don't think there's anything better a lawyer that has an interest in election law can be doing, is making sure the polls are accessible and available for people to participate in. And I'm proud to have been part of that, and if I leave a legacy in the law, I hope that's part of it.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that's very gratifying, and you're to be commended for your work on that issue. You mentioned during the course of our conversation a number of things that happened when you were young, people taking a chance on you or having confidence in you. What do you think we need to do today to make sure that young people stay active in government and politics? Like, so many of them seem to be cynical about the system or feel that maybe it doesn't offer them, something.
Well, like many things in life, it starts at home. Mm-hmm. And I think if parents take an interest and if they spend the time to read, and people talk about the waning days of newspapers. Well, the upside is that to the extent you have a laptop at home, it's pretty easy to get the news, and there aren't too many excuses, I think, in a household with internet capacity to know what's going on. And there's always television, traditional television. But I think parents who are informed breed children who are informed. So I think that's a starting point. I think our schools need to make part of the fabric of curriculums something we probably remember as children, civics classes, and the role of government in our lives. And it has to be tangible, and people need to be educated in understanding how tangible it is and how it affects them. Harry Pizicki's group, the Center for Civic Responsibility, I think, has taken the bull by the horns. I guess somebody didn't like what I
guess so, yeah.
So they're sending him for me. But
that's our audience.
Yeah. But I commend them for taking the bull by the horns and filling this vacuum. And I've spoken to his group about different community organizations that can intersect with the Center for Civic Responsibility on achieving that kind of education with young people. I serve on the Boys and Girls Club of Newark, and I see firsthand how important mentoring is, and I think a more aggressive mentoring of young people in showing that connection between their lives and government. And I think in the end, part of the problem is that the cynicism just transcends young people. There is great cynicisms for people, cynicism about people in public life, about politicians, about what politicians do and why they do it. And there's been a broad brush painted by virtue of the admitted corruption of some on the many who are well-meaning, have a lot to offer, have invested their lives in trying to make our world better, and we need to respect that vocation. We respect athletes in this country. We respect, or at least are interested in entertainers. I think the problem is deeper than politics. I think the problem is we've got to get our priorities in order, and among those priorities there is honor in public service, and we've lost that. Mm-hmm. When we restore that, then I think young people will pay more attention to it.
Yeah.
Only 47% of the people that could vote did vote in the last governor's race. That means half the people really chose not to exercise their franchise. How important is